next guest, we stay on sport. Scott Dunlap, he has been running ultramarathon, so over 100 miles. And it's very interesting to see how he tried to measure his passion with a lot of tools. So huge round of applause for Scott Dunlap. Hello, Scott.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you.
Great. Thanks for having me, everybody. By the way, am I the only one who has the LeWeb dancer in my dreams? Now that you've seen that a few dozen times, it's like going like this? No? Okay. Well, once again, my name is Scott Dunlap. I am an entrepreneur. I've done about 5 startups. And with 10th Dimension Design Labs, I still help startups with growth strategies, particularly organic growth. But as Loic mentioned, I do like to run a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot, like Forrest Gump a lot. Does everybody know Forrest Gump? But I find out that the more that I run, it seems like the more optimism and energy and passion I have in every part of my life, whether that's family, friends, startups, music. And why is that? I mean, I should be exhausted, but yet the more I pour into my passion, the more energy I have. I'm trying to find the source of that. I'm trying to measure it the best that I can. And I'm wondering if the Internet of Things can help me get there. So that's the journey I'd like to talk to you about today and where I'm at. And hopefully there's a few tidbits in there, both for startups and the personal life. The Internet of Things. Is it our destiny to become lazy with the convenience of technology? Some of you might recognize these guys from the movie WALL-E, where the ultimate evolution of technology is to turn us into these drones that never have to get up out of the chair, get every media they want, served up to them, and drink cupcake in a cup, which, now that I think about it, actually sounds pretty delicious. But joking aside, we know convenience is king. We know that we tend towards the path of least resistance. So is it our destiny to be lazy? And in which case, why do anything hard? I mean, we just heard from Bill and Susie. Why would you strap yourself to a wedge in the sky and surf when you could just sit on the beach? Why would you try to solve the African water crisis when you could be drinking Cristal and flashing your Rolex like Chris does? Or even this, the web, Loic and Geraldine. There is technology for webinars. You don't have to put all of this whole thing together. Inevitably, if you ask that question enough times, you will hear this answer: because it's my passion. A passion, not an ambition, not a hobby, but something worthy of a life pursuit, something worth giving your body, your mind, your spirit to willingly and effortlessly. You'll get 10,000 brushstrokes to make the sunset perfect in a painting, and then crumple it up and throw it away and give 10,000 more. You might crack 1,000 eggs to make sure that creme brulee is just right, or even in my case, take a couple 100,000 steps just to see what's out there on the end of a journey. Truly powerful. It takes diligence, it takes persistence, it takes courage, but at the same time, if you ask passionate people, they will tell you it feels effortless. Passion is powerful this way, and it is behind just about every major thing that we love as a human race. It's behind the Arc de Triomphe, the Tour Eiffel. It gives us our Da Vinci's. It gives us our Steve Jobs and our Bill and Melinda Gates. And passion is infinite. People who are passionate about what they do can't help but have that energy spill into everything that is that they do. And that passion can be amplified when surrounded by other passionate people. You heard about it with kite surfing. And I know we can even feel it in places like here at LeWeb, where passionate people get together. So can it be measured? I think so. I believe it's the core of the human spirit and really the best energy source that we have. The trick, of course, is how can it be measured? Well, I'm hoping that the Internet of Things can help provide a way to do that. And I think the only way is to pick a passion and then just dive into it and measure everything that you possibly can and look for the patterns. And I'm particularly looking for 2 things. One is, what is that energy source? And what are those moments of euphoria that I think you can only achieve when you're completely engrossed in a passion that you have? This is my passion. It's called ultra running or ultra marathons. These are long-distance runs usually between 50 kilometers and 180 kilometers, and generally over the craziest terrain that Mother Nature can possibly provide. This, I wish I looked like this. This isn't me. This is one of the heroes of our sport, Anton Krupicka, demonstrating the equipment necessary: shoes, shorts, and a water bottle. That's really just about it. As a matter of fact, one could argue that even those aren't needed if that was socially acceptable. It's exhilarating. It's incredibly challenging to run 100 miles. But in terms of a passion where you can measure what the body, mind, and spirit is contributing, I think this is a good place to start. Now, the Internet of Things has provided a lot. You heard James from Fitbit come in today, and along with Jawbone and Nike and Strive, we've got a number of things, ways that we can passively measure what's going on with our bodies. And this one on the bottom from Basis Science just came out last week. It actually, on the back of the watch, has a skin sensor that shines into your skin to measure your heart rate, as also gives you skin temperature, analyzes your sweat, pH balance, a number of things like that. So every month or so, something new is coming out to help measure another thing about yourself. And I call that the Internet of Me. There's also the Internet of Now. What is happening during the event? At the top here, I've got a fluid monitor, so it actually measures how much water I take in. On either side, we've got watches from Garmin and Polar, which not only give you location, but can also track altitude, temperature, a number of other things. And probably one of the most underappreciated technologies is the D tag. And how many of you have ever seen a D tag before? A D tag, if you sign up on a race, you strap one of these to your shoe. It's disposable. And as you cross a pad, it makes sure, one, that you're doing the race course the way that you're supposed to, but then it immediately posts to Facebook and tells your friends how you're doing in that 10K or that half marathon or marathon. And you can hack this. You can take this data and use a site like If This Then That and just create all kinds of things. My favorite one is to have it text me and tell me how far behind I am versus my closest competition. Of course, try not to overdo it. You can get a lot out of control here. You go full Borg, that's what we often like to say. So the important thing is to not lose the essence of the race itself. So I'd like to show you a little bit of data so that you can understand not only what it is that we're measuring, but this difference between, say, a marathon and an ultramarathon. This is an altitude chart of the Boston Marathon, one of the more venerable and known marathons out there. And as you can see at mile 20, there is the Heartbreak Hill. For runners that are out there, everybody knows Heartbreak Hill. It's known to break people on a regular basis if they don't plan for it. When I ran the Boston Marathon last April, this is what came out of my Internet of Things. I burned about 2,400 calories, which is about the average daily calorie burn for a normal inactive male. Took 27,000 steps. That's about 3 to 4 times what normal people take in their regular day. And 50 ounces of water, which wasn't clearly enough. But that's okay. It got me through the race. Now, if I compare it to an ultramarathon that's held on trails in the mountains, such as the Woodside 50K, which is near my home in California, you can see right away that these are two very different beasts. The Woodside 50K immediately pitches right up into the mountains, and because of that, your calorie burn is 50% higher, even though the length of the race is only about 5 miles longer. I took about 40,000 steps. I'm drinking considerably more water. In fact, the 50K is kind of a magical distance because it's just enough where you have to think about your calorie and water and electrolyte input as much as the pace that you're running. Otherwise, you don't make it to the finish. Whereas if you've watched the Kenyans on TV, a lot of them can just sprint right through a marathon without even drinking water. But neither of these compare to the mother of all ultramarathons, which is the 100-mile race, or which is about 160, 170 kilometers. Here's the Boston Marathon and the Woodside 50K compared to the Wasatch 100-mile race, which is in Utah in the United States. And you can see right away, Wasatch starts at about 5,000 feet and immediately goes up to 9,500 feet. So in the first 10 miles, you actually burn more calories than the entire Boston Marathon. And guess what? You still have 90 miles to run. And the goal, of course, is to finish it in less than 24 hours. Well, generally the cutoff is 30 hours, but if you can finish it in 24, that's great. 15,000 calories burned, 130,000 steps. So we're starting to get into the near crazy zone at this point, 440 ounces of water. But of course, the Wasatch is not the craziest race out there. There are significantly more. This is the altitude chart of the Hard Rock 100, which goes to California. As you can see, it starts at 10,000 feet. It's about 3,000 meters, but is immediately pitching up to 14,000 feet, which is over 4,000 meters. And you start to really get into the crazy zone. The Leadville 100 mile is all over 10,000 feet. And the last one that I did here, the Tour de Mont Blanc, where you do a circumnavigation of Mont Blanc. It's about 108 miles long. And this is, you see the star there. This is actually what I tracked from the Tour de Mont Blanc. Almost 19,000 calories, which, if you think about it, I'm burning between 4 and 5 pounds of fat just in one event, which is kind of exciting. It's an instant diet plan. I'm taking about 150,000 steps, which is about 2 times the weekly average of your typical inactive adult, and then a considerable amount of water, anything to just keep your body moving forward. And although it's fun to burn 4 to 5 calories in a single day, you look great at the finish line. You don't feel so great sometimes, but you certainly look great. That's really not why we do this. Oh, by the way, in case you lost track of Heartbreak Hill, there it is. Doesn't seem so devastating now. This is really why we run ultramarathons. This is why we run ultramarathons. When you're out there in Mother Nature, every single mountain pass seems impossible, but yet you break it down and you get it done. And you have these moments of euphoria that are nothing short of a religious experience. By the way, I'm in this picture. I'm not sure if you can see, but just to give you an idea of the scale. One of the ways I like to track that euphoria is I had some folks hack up a simple watch where I could actually just ping myself every 30 minutes and ask, how am I doing? On the plus scale, am I good, great, awesome, euphoric, or am I not doing so well? Rough patch, struggling, am I in serious trouble, or please kill me now, which is really the bottom measurement, or -5. And it turns out as I go through these races, they all have the exact same oscillating pattern. Starts out great. You have a dip. If you can get through that dip, you actually feel better than when you started. And it goes through another dip. You see the amplitude actually increases the farther you go, and the cycle time decreases as well. And I've learned to name these after a while. The wall, the pit, and the abyss. The wall, I'm sure some of you have heard the term, I hit the wall. The wall is actually the body. It's taking its first shot to get you to stop. Largely by saying, here's a side stitch, here's a cramp, here's a headache you've never felt before. But generally, if you're fueling yourself correctly and you can get through it, it feels exhilarating to actually get through that all the way through. Now, if you go about 40 miles in, you end up in the pit. And now the body's had its chance, the mind is what's next. And the mind conjures up every negative piece of feedback you've ever had your entire life and dumps it on you all at once. And like, my 6th grade girlfriend never thought I would be able to do anything. I mean, it's amazing what your mind can conjure up to get you to stop. But sooner or later, you realize you can just turn it all off like a spigot. And it's absolutely quiet. It's nothing but the rhythm of your steps, and it just feels amazing. Which leaves only the abyss. And the abyss, I believe, is the test of the spirit, because you're left with the only fundamental questions that you have, because you don't even have time to think about anything trivial. All it is what is my purpose in life? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Often comes up about 10,000 times too. And if you can make it through the abyss, it's just an incredible euphoric feeling that's nothing short of a religious experience on the other side. Now in startup land, we actually have these 3 as well. I like to think that the wall is the equivalent of shipping your first product. It's hard. I mean, if you don't have operations and support and everything all set up, I mean, it takes a while to get through that. And then once you do, it's pretty fantastic. And the pit is like when you get your first 50 to 100 customers, and they're all calling you, and they're asking for 100 different things. They're trying to take your company in 100 different directions, but if you can get through it, you'll make your way to the abyss. And I like to think of this one as you probably are still losing money, and you believe in this business model, but everybody is beginning to doubt you. I always think of Andrew Mason and Groupon. That's probably the classic example. Like, that guy is fighting through the abyss right now. Hopefully, he can find euphoria on the other end, because when you do, it's pretty amazing. Now, one thing I love about the Internet of Things is it's helped me understand what's going on in the body when I hit this point of euphoria. Heart rate and speed. You'll notice these two things that are interesting. When my mind is absolutely floating in air because I feel fantastic, the heart rate actually drops below the average by about 12 to 15%, while simultaneously your speed increases at 10%. So even though I've already run for 70 miles, I'm most efficient actually right at this point, which I find absolutely fascinating. As I talk to other elite athletes, they always talk about, oh yeah, you have flow, or you're in the zone. And I've sent this data to yogis to Buddhist monks to PhDs to coaches, and everyone knows exactly what I'm talking. They just cut me off before they even look at the data. They're like, yes, you're in transcendence, you're achieving enlightenment, you're in that state of mushin, which is a Zen concept. You have the runner's high. And that's what I love about it. No matter who I send it to, this is a known human condition, which I find absolutely fascinating. One of the most interesting ones is UC Irvine in particular, in California, has been talking about this chemical called anandamide. Anandamide triggers these chemical receptors in the body that gives you that experience. Matter of fact, one of the external triggers that triggers the same chemical receptors is marijuana. So shout out to the stoners, yeah. Turns out you probably don't need to run 70 miles. But anandamide, along with some endorphins, as well as a fair amount of dopamine, is what's helping create that nearly euphoric state. So everybody asks me, what does it feel like? What does it feel like to be in that euphoric state? And I think the best way to describe it is to actually explain something that happened in one of my 100-mile races. I have a crew, which is 2 friends who check in with me every 5 to 10 miles just to make sure I'm okay. And at mile 85 in the Western States 100 mile, the crew said, "How are you feeling?" And I said something. I don't remember saying it, but when they told me later, I said, "Yep, I remember feeling that." And it's going to sound a little out there, but this is what I said. When you stare into the abyss, see it for what it truly is, an infinite pool of will and courage. See the reflection of your soul, and to some, this is the face of God. Stare into her eyes, it is full of stars. My God, it's full of stars. And I'm pretty sure I stole that last one from 2010, A Space Odyssey. So, conclusions other than Scott is clearly off the deep end when he goes running. This journey has just begun. I'm collecting a ton of data, and thanks to all this technology, I think I'm beginning to get it right down to what is causing this euphoric state and where this source of passion really comes from. But in the process of running these 100-milers, I've learned a few things about life and startups that I'd like to pass on in the next 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So lesson number 1, this may be obvious to folks who attend LeWeb, but encourage passion in those around you. You'd be surprised how many groups I talk to, particularly in large companies, it doesn't even occur to them to ask their coworkers what is their passion. That's all you have to do. Take them out to lunch with an open mind and listen to what their passions are. And if you're a CEO or a manager, I often like to say, make sure you follow up with when's your next vacation. Because a lot of times I talk to people who don't have vacations booked. There's some reason they think of that as like a bonus check that comes at the end of the year. Force them to take vacation. Give them the vacation so that they can encourage their passion, and you'll get it back 20-fold. Lesson number 2, there's no such thing as work-life balance. There is only life balance. I'm really not a big fan of this term, work-life balance, because it implies that there's 2 opposing forces. The truth is, if you can engage a passion, it spills over into the rest of your life. It makes everything easier. So next time you hear somebody say work-life balance, what I want you to do is hold out your hand and hold out your arm, make an open hand like this, and just slap them across the face. And it works particularly well with human resources, because they're usually the ones who talk about work-life balance. You just tell them I told them to do that. Lesson number 3, you've probably heard this term, that we're not in a sprint, we're in a marathon. Well, I like to tell people, hey, the marathon is a sprint. So for many of us, so pack lean. What I mean by that personally is, if you find yourself in the back of your head carrying any of these negative, useless emotions like envy and hate and regret, like, you need to cut that baggage loose. It's just drag. It's just slowing you down. And similarly in a startup, when you begin, it's just as important to talk about what you're not going to do as it is to what you are going to do. Get streamlined. Get focused. Pack lean, because it's going to be a long trip. Lesson number 4, predict and celebrate the pain. You know it's coming. You know it's there. Just talk about it. You can use the terms, the wall, the pit, and the abyss, and it doesn't seem quite so bad when you go, yeah, we're in the pit right now. You'll give out some high fives, because passion is going to pull you through to euphoria. That's going to be great. There is no greater feeling than life success through the rigors of passion. And if you don't find yourself in a position in life where you are using that passion to feed everything, then you need to go find it. You need to go find it right now. So don't stop until you find it, and do that with everyone around you. And then just keep going, because it's going to feel effortless. And this was a lot of fun, you guys, to talk about running for the first time on a stage in front of technology people. So I really appreciate the time that I have, and I hope to see you on the trails. If you love all this stuff, come to my blog, a Trail Runner's blog. I like to post all kinds of crazy data and talk about how we achieve our life's passions. And yeah, I think that's about it. So thanks so much for the time.